steps into it. Pass is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal. Touchdown! Kansas City! Damian Williams runs to immortality and will be remembered forever in the Chiefs' kingdom.
Yes, hello everybody and welcome in once again to another episode of Talkin American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg. Another Sunday night rolls around. We're going to have a chat about what's been going on in the NFL through 2 weeks and one game to be exact. And we'll turn our eye, we'll have a look at what happened last week and then we'll turn our eye to a slate of games tomorrow, which I am very excited about. I think this is going to be a massive week 3. I said last week, week 2, that I left the show saying that I thought there might be some opportunities for some upsets, and then really there was only one, and that was the final game of the weekend, which was, of course, Monday Night Football. The Raiders, their first game at their new stadium there in their new city, Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. They got a really good win over New Orleans. But as for all of the other games, I guess the only team that won last week that people probably didn't expect was the LA Rams, who beat Philadelphia in Philadelphia. And even that wasn't really an upset. I said last week that I picked Philadelphia and I wasn't very confident, and I think you saw why. So I think there will be some great games tomorrow, and certainly a week that I think we could see some teams that need to get cracking, need to start winning, and some teams that might be on upset alert. But we'll have a look back in time now at week 2, and oh my God, was there anyone that got out of week 2 alive? Man, it was the body bag week, wasn't it? I'm going to run through the guys that were injured. And there were a lot of guys injured, but I think the real concerning thing from last week was, it's always concerning when players get injured, of course, but the sheer number of guys that got injured and the quality of guys too. So listen to this. This is what am I trying to say? An honor roll, I suppose, or a dishonor roll of guys who were injured last week. So here we go. Giants running back Saquon Barkley, torn ACL. Panthers running back Christian McCaffrey, an ankle. That's going to keep him out for, I think, 4 to 6 weeks. Broncos quarterback Drew Lock with a shoulder. I think he's going to be out for a similar sort of time. Broncos wide receiver Cortland Sutton, torn ACL. 49ers quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo, an ankle sprain. He's going to be out for a couple of weeks. 49ers running back Raheem Mostert, sprained MCL. 49ers pass rusher Nick Bosa, torn ACL. 49ers defensive lineman Solomon Thomas, torn ACL. So there's some big names there, and there's some really important names for their teams. I mean, Saquon Barkley done for the year. I mean, that is just a blow for the New York Giants and San Francisco as well. I'm going to touch on a little bit later the impact I think those injuries will have for that team. But man, I can't recall a team being hit by injuries as hard as the Niners were last week for quite a while. I mean, the quarterback, arguably your 2 best defensive linemen. They've got a couple of their running backs now that are injured. I mean, most it was injured on the weekend, but Tevin Coleman's struggling as well. And then they've got a whole bunch of stuff happening with their wide receivers as well. They got Mohamed Sanu, I think, before last week to try and bolster a depth chart there that has been absolutely ravaged by injury. So that was the big takeaway from week 2. Unfortunately, I don't mean to start on a negative note, but that was the main theme from week 2, the guys that were injured. Let's go back and have a look at the games now. We'll go all the way back to Thursday night, where I spoke about this game last week, so we'll just touch on this one briefly. The Browns, Thursday Night Football last week at home, beat the Bengals 35-30. Joe Burrow was the first rookie in NFL history in that one to have more than 60 pass attempts and not throw an interception. So that was well done there by Joe Burrow. They weren't good enough to get the win, unfortunately. Cincinnati, they're 0-2 now, and the Browns with that win get to 1-1. The Bears and the Giants, that game where Barkley tore his ACL, the Giants went down to the Bears in that one. The Bears 17-13. It's the only the fifth time since 1993 that Chicago have started 2-0. So well done to them. I know Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn as well played his first game for the Bears this year, and they both played quite well. They need their defense to carry them once again this year, I think. Chicago, the Cowboys and the Falcons. What a game this was! The Cowboys absolutely got out of jail. They won that, an absolute classic, 40-39. Atlanta were up 20-0 at the end of the first quarter, and they had a 39-24 lead with only just over 5 minutes to play in the last quarter, and still somehow found a way to lose that one. Of course, the onside kick that they just stood there and just turned into statues, and the Cowboys jumped on that one. So it's a good win for the Cowboys, but I don't think there'd be too much backslapping in that one. They really, like I said, got out of jail, and they needed Greg Zuerlein to nail that field goal to get over the top in that one. The Green Bay Packers, man, don't they just keep on rolling on? They doubled the Lions' score there. I like this little bit of symmetry. The Packers 42 beat the Lions 21. Now, listen to this. This is ominous for the rest of the league. It's the third time in the Super Bowl era that the Packers have scored at least 40 points in back-to-back games. In each of the previous two times they've done that, 2011 and 2014, Aaron Rodgers has gone on to win the NFL, MVP award. So, we say he's a bad man. He hasn't looked like a bad man the last couple of years, but 2 weeks down, and the Packers look really good. Detroit, man, I'm not feeling good about my pick to. I picked them to win that division. Only 2 weeks in, I'm not feeling real good about that one. Indianapolis, they were one of the really surprising losers in week one. They bounced back with a win at home over the Vikings. The Colts won 28-11. It's been a really poor start for the Vikings, hasn't it? And in particular, Kirk Cousins. This was a game that the Colts, back at home, they just had to win this one. Kirk Cousins, he threw 3 interceptions, which is his first time throwing that many picks in a game since he's gone to the Vikings. And the offense in that game for Minnesota finished with just 175 yards. So through 2 weeks, they have some issues, Minnesota. The Bills, they went to 2-0. They beat the Dolphins 31-28. They were a little bit, that's a close scoreline, but they were a little bit better than that, the Bills in that one. Josh Allen, man, has he started well. 417 yards and 4 touchdowns, which is the most in his career. He's in the early discussion for MVP. There's a few quarterbacks in the league that have started really well. I just mentioned Aaron Rodgers. Josh Allen is another one. I know he has his doubters. I said in my first episode here of Talking American Footy a couple of weeks ago that I like Josh Allen more than most. And if they're going to win this division, like some people have picked, including me, Josh Allen needs to keep on keeping on. And that was a nice win for the Bills. They're 2-0 now, like I say, but probably just as importantly, 2-0 in the division, a win over the Jets and the Dolphins. The 49ers, back to them, that ill-fated game against the Jets. They won that game 31-13, but there really was a dampener on it, wasn't it, with all the guys that were injured. And the New York Jets, they really should have pounced on that opportunity to beat the Niners with all the guys that the Niners had going down, but they didn't even really give a whimper, did they? There was that one play that I saw, and I just have that going through my head where they needed to, I think it was 3rd and 31 for the Jets, 3rd and 31, for the Niners, 3rd and 31, and the Niners picked up 55 yards on a halfback toss on the play. That tells you everything about how the Jets are traveling. The defense was supposed to be the better, I guess, side of the ball for the Jets, and then they're letting the 49ers pick up 55 yards on a 3rd and 31. My God, I said I wasn't very, very hot on the Jets this year, and I think we've seen why through 2 weeks. They're in some trouble, and so are the Niners. I think I will get to them, but yeah, losing that amount of players, boy oh boy. The LA Rams. I said last week that I wasn't confident picking the Eagles, and this is why the Rams beat them 30 in Philadelphia, 37-19. And the Rams, get this, the Rams are now 27-0 in games where they've led at halftime under Sean McVay. They get their noses in front, they don't lose. Well, obviously, according to that stat. And what have I got here? The Rams, a really even performance as well. They're spreading the ball around. They had 7 guys who had at least 1 rushing attempt and 6 players with 2 receptions or more. So they had some issues last year on the offense. Todd Gurley wasn't himself in the offensive line as well, but they look like they're almost back to resembling the Super Bowl LA Rams from a couple of years ago. I'm not prepared to say that categorically through just 2 weeks, but they look good. The Rams, the Steelers, they've gone to 2-0. They beat the Broncos 26-21. That was in a game where Denver lost their quarterback and the wide receiver. Of course, they've signed Blake Bortles during the week, the Broncos, so he will come in probably as the backup. They've got Jeff Driscoll there who will probably start, but yeah, I mean, they only lost by 5 points. So, coming into the year, they probably would have almost taken out the Broncos, but this was an interesting team that a lot of people were looking forward to seeing that have now, had 2 of their best young players ripped from them from a few weeks. So they're just going to have to tread water until they can get Drew Lock back. They won't be getting Cortland Sutton back. The Bucs beat the Panthers 31-17. The Bucs, again, looking a little bit sloppy, but they're just starting to click. So that was a good win for them. And Christian McCaffrey, of course, is the big out for Carolina. Teddy Bridgewater's going to have to carry that team now, unfortunately. The Titans, they beat Jacksonville 33-30. Jacksonville had their chances in that game, but Tennessee just a bit too strong. First time they've got to 2-0, Tennessee, since 2008. The first time they've started 2-0 in about, what's that, about 12 seasons. So they're going along okay, and Jacksonville are going a little bit better than people expected as well. Well, a lot better. The Cardinals, they beat Washington. They made mincemeat of Washington, actually, 30-15. Kyler Murray, 158 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns through 2 weeks. He's been incredible, and he is well and truly in the MVP discussion. He's another one of those quarterbacks that's been really good through 2 weeks, so keep an eye on him. Terry McLaurin's really been the only bright spot on that offense. He finished with 125 receiving yards, 17.9 yards per catch, so he's having a good second season. The Ravens, I said they would have a comfortable win over the Texans, and they did indeed, 33-16. 5 consecutive wins now for the Ravens in the regular season, of 16 points or more. So they are the best team in the league right now. I had them number 1 atop my power rankings at the start of the season, and I feel pretty good about that. The Chiefs, they were made to work for it against the LA Chargers. They needed a field goal in overtime, and they won that one. Harrison Butker come up clutch, so they win 23-20. Seahawks in New England on Sunday night. What a game that was. That was a great game. Seahawks 35-30. And then, like I said, Monday Night Football, the Raiders 34-24. There's some issues with the Saints, isn't there? And Drew Brees, but the Raiders good winners in that one. My biggest winner for the week was Las Vegas Raiders. They've gone to 2-0 now, and that's a really good win against a team that a lot of people thought were in contention for the Super Bowl. I guess they still are, but they're not looking as good as they did, going into the season. So the Raiders were my biggest winner. And the biggest loser, I've cheated a little bit. I've gone with a team that actually won, but I've gone with San Francisco just because of all the injuries there. I don't think I think that they're done now. San Francisco for this year, they're cooked. I don't think they can recover from losing the important guys that they did. They will get some of them back. Garoppolo will be back, and they'll get some of the running backs and wide receivers back. But the big call for me after 2 weeks is that the San Francisco 49ers are done. Not only are they not going to win the Super Bowl or even get back to the Super Bowl, I don't think they make the playoffs with the other 3 teams who are up and about in that division. So you can put a big black line through San Francisco. Rightio, that's my wrap of week 2. I'm going to take my first break here, and when I come back, I will have a look at the Thursday night football game and the games in the first window, the 1 p.m. games tomorrow morning. You're listening to Talkin American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, Casey Radio 97.7 FM, back in a bit. Welcome back, folks. You're listening to Talkin American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, on Casey Radio 97.7 FM. Before the break, we had a look at, a wrap of week 2 and all of the exciting things that we saw in week 2. It wasn't really that exciting in terms of upsets and whatnot, but there was plenty of teams who had some good wins, and like I've mentioned on a couple of occasions, plenty of injuries that are not good for teams' hopes moving forward this season. Week 3 is underway. Of course, it began on with Thursday night football. Friday morning last week, it was two of the Florida teams. The Miami Dolphins were on the road to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and a good win for the Dolphins in this one, their first win of the season. They beat the Jags 31-13, so both teams now, as a result of that game, go to 1-2. It was a good win for the Dolphins because, of course, on the road on a short week, not a lot of travel, obviously. It's an in-state game, but they were pretty disappointing against the Bills last week, even though they only lost by 3 points. And there was some little murmurs that Tua, some Dolphins fans were calling for Tua. I'm not sure about that, but Ryan Fitzpatrick come out on Friday and put an end to that. He was pretty good, actually. You have a look at these stats: 18 of 20, 160 yards and 2 touchdowns, and I think he connected on 11 of his 11 straight passes out of the gate. So well done, Ryan Fitzpatrick. The Jaguars, Gardner Minshew, he doesn't look too bad, does he? 30 of 42, 275 yards and an interception. He's very aggressive, though, isn't he, Minshew? I counted, I think, 3 times where he put the ball into a really dangerous spot where there was only one receiver and 2 or 3 defensive backs who were waiting to feast on that one. Left tackle for the Jags, Cam Robinson, was ejected in that one for contact with the referee. Unsportsmanlike contact, it was called, contact with the referee. So I thought that was an interesting one. So week 3 is underway with the Miami Dolphins getting their first win on the board. And tomorrow we'll have a look now at the 1 p.m. games. The first one up, well, the first one that I'm going to look at anyway, is the Chicago Bears, the 2-0 Chicago Bears. They travel to Atlanta to play the Falcons, who are 0-2. Just before I get into this game, can I just say, during the week, Gale Sayers, the great Gale Sayers, unfortunately passed away at the age of 77. So he's one of the great running backs. Was only in the league for 7 seasons with the Chicago Bears, and injury really only kept him to five seasons where he actually sort of took the field. But just under 5,000 yards in that time, 5 yards per carry. That's an incredible average with 39 touchdowns as well. So he was named to the 1960s All-Decade Team, the 50th Anniversary All-Time Team, the 75th Anniversary All-Time Team, and then, of course, the NFL 100th Anniversary Team that they named last year. So in just 5 seasons, really, of playing, one of the all-time greats. So I was saddened to hear Gale Sayers passed away. For the Bears, they go to Atlanta and play an Atlanta team that lost the unlosable last week. I've got a stat here if I can find it. They since 1933, get a load of this, since 1933, teams are now 440-1 when scoring 39 points or more without a turnover. That one was the Atlanta Falcons last Sunday. That was incredible. And I think the Cowboys at one point in that game, they only had like a 2% chance to win. And of course they did. So Atlanta back at home, they'll be pretty keen to get a win here and get their first win on the board. Julio Jones, he hurt his hamstring. He's had a dodgy hamstring to start the season, but he hurt it a little bit more apparently last week. So that's not a good sign for the Falcons. And Atlanta have the second worst defense through 2 weeks. This is a difficult one to pick, but I'm going to pick Atlanta to get back on the winners list. The next game, won't this be a good one? The LA Rams, they stay out on the East Coast. I don't know if they stay there. They may have come back. I assume they did come back. Played Philadelphia last week. They were too strong for the Eagles, and they go back over to the East Coast to play the Buffalo Bills. So a game between two 2-0 teams. We're going to learn a lot in this game. Josh Allen, I said he'd started quite well. He's the second quarterback since 1948 to throw for 700 yards and complete 70% of his passes with zero interceptions in the first 2 weeks of the season. The second guy. The other guy, Patrick Mahomes. You may have heard of him. He's a pretty good guy. Malcolm Brown and Cam Akers for the Rams. They're battling some injuries. Brown with a finger and Cam Akers with a rib injury. So they'll need to sort out what they're going to do there. The Rams, that might be Darrell Henderson's time to shine. They're 3-13 against the AFC East since 2002, so they've struggled against this division, the Rams, in recent times. And like I said, they're playing consecutive road games. This is a really tough game to pick, but I'm going to go with the Bills, I think, to get a win at home. I really like the Rams. They've surprised me, but I think 2 consecutive road games might be a little bit too much. The next game, Washington at Cleveland. Both these teams sitting at 1-1. We see what the Browns are trying to do, don't we? Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, they're pounding the ground with those two guys. They combined for 210 yards on Thursday Night Football last week. Washington have allowed 30 or more points in 4 of the last 5 games, and it's also Washington's second straight game on the road. This is a tough one. I'm going to say Cleveland. This is an opportunity for 2 teams to get a win, or an opportunity, for Washington to get another win. They've already won 1 game, and they're a team that people didn't expect to win too many games. I'm interested to see how this Cleveland rebuilt offensive line goes against Washington's front 4, which has been good. But I'm going to say Cleveland at home in that one. Another really good game here is Tennessee in Minnesota against the Vikings. It's been a really bad start for the Vikings and Kirk Cousins. Cousins has thrown 7 interceptions in the last 6 games. And they just can't get the balance right. In week 1, the offense was okay, although they lost against the Packers. But their defense was not great. And then the offense fell away last week when the defense was trying to pick themselves up. They're not using Dalvin Cook as they would like, because they're falling behind in games. So Minnesota, who a lot of people picked to win this division, 0-2, and they need to find a win, don't they, Minnesota? They're back at home against Tennessee. Tennessee have been going okay. They managed to find a way to beat Jacksonville last week. Ryan Tannehill, he's started the season 8 for 10 with 6 touchdowns and a 130 passer rating in the red zone this year. So they paid him big money, and he's really showing up. So this is a tough game. I'm actually going to pick Tennessee to go on the road and win this one, and Minnesota to fall to 3-0. Another good game here. The Raiders, after a big win against the Saints, they go to Foxborough to play New England. How about this for Josh Jacobs? Through his first 15 NFL games, he now has 1,331 yards. That's more than Marcus Allen through his first 15 games, and Bo Jackson. Allen had 1,043. Bo Jackson had 1,003. So there's some all-time greats of that franchise, and Jacobs has more than those 2 guys through 15 games. Darren Waller was enormous on Monday night. He had 12 catches for 103 yards and a touchdown. And the Raiders' offense scored on 6 of their final 7 possessions after falling behind. Jacobs and Waller, though, haven't practiced all that much this week. And linebacker Nick Kwiatkowski as well has been dealing with a pectoral muscle. And the Patriots, man, they've got Cam Newton, and Cam Newton almost looks as good as what he looked with the Panthers. I mean, a lot of people like myself picked the Bills to win that division, but that's a 2-horse race now, and they actually play each other in week 7. So we look forward to that. That could be, well, I'm sure it will be a battle for the division. I'm picking New England back at home in this one, although I'm looking forward to watching this game, and we're going to learn a lot about these 2 teams. The next game in the 1 p.m. time slot, San Francisco are back in New York, where they might have the heebie-jeebies after seeing a bunch of their players go down to injury. They're playing the Giants, who lost Saquon Barkley as well. albeit that was in Chicago. Nick Mullins is going to start for San Francisco. We'll see how he goes there. The Giants signed Devontae Freeman to replace, well, not really to replace, but to make sure they've got some sort of, running back leading the way there. San Francisco 0-2. Like I said, I think they're out of the mix this year, San Francisco, but I do think they will win this game. I think, unfortunately, the Giants, with no Saquon Barkley, that has torpedoed their season. And, he was going to be their focal point, but I can't see too many wins now coming their way, the Giants. Cincinnati and Philadelphia. Man, have Philadelphia started bad. And Carson Wentz, he was only sacked once last week, but he still threw 2 interceptions and just holding on to the ball and just making some bad decisions. I mentioned Joe Burrow last week, 60-plus pass attempts and 0 interceptions. Jalen Reagor for the Eagles has landed on injured reserve, so their wide receiver room takes another hit. Philadelphia, they just have to win this game. They just need to find a way to win this game, and I think they will, and I think they'll get back to 1-2. And the last game I'm going to look at in the time slot of 1 p.m. is Houston at Pittsburgh. The Steelers have won 4 of their last, they've won the last 4 games against Houston. The Watt brothers are going to play, and it's only going to be the 3rd time in history 3 brothers have played in the one game. Can you believe the 2nd time was last year with the Edmond brothers in Pittsburgh and Buffalo, and that was the first time in a long time, since 1927, I think. The Steelers are going to have right guard David DeCastro back, so that's good news for them. How about Houston? Week 1, Kansas City. Then they go and play Baltimore in week 2. And now they go to Pittsburgh to play the resurgent Steelers, who look like they're back to their best. I think Houston are going to go to 0-3 here. Pittsburgh's 3-0. And we look forward to the Pittsburgh and Ravens game. I had a look. I think they're playing in week 6. So another win for the Steelers here. So that's the 1 p.m. time slot. I'm going to take another quick break, and when I come back, I'll have a look at the evening games and Sunday night and Monday night football. And the next block of games I will look at will feature, I think, the game of the season. That's when we return on Talking American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, on KC Radio 97.7 FM. Back in a bit. Welcome back, gang. You're listening to Talking American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, on KC Radio 97.7 FM. We're going through and having a look at all the games for week 3 tomorrow morning. Before the break, I had a look at all the games in the 1 p.m. time slot. Now I'm going to turn my attention, I should say, to the mid-afternoon games, of which there are some beauties, some absolute beauties. Like I said earlier on this evening, I'm really looking forward to the slate of games tomorrow. This first one, not so much. The New York Jets at the Indianapolis Colts. And my golly gosh, aren't the Jets in trouble? I said during the week, I said earlier on this season that I don't really know about the Jets this year, and I don't hold out too much hope for them. And, I mean, week 1, if they play week 1, they lost to the Bills, so you sort of expected that. And I guess you expect them to lose to the Niners as well, but like I said earlier, they had an opportunity to get themselves into that game with the Niner players dropping like flies, and they just couldn't do it. So I think Adam Gase is one of the guys who is under a lot of pressure right now. Him and Sam Darnold, to be honest. They travel to Indianapolis to play a team in the Colts who have had a bit of an up and down start. They've played 2 games. They were pretty ordinary in week 1, losing to Jacksonville. In week 2, they were a little bit better at home, beating Minnesota. Their defense actually responded late in the 3rd quarter. The Vikings quarterback there, Kirk Cousins, was sitting on a passer rating of 0.0. And that's quite different from last week, where Gardner Minshew, they couldn't even get Gardner Minshew to throw an incomplete pass in week 1. He looked that good. So Jonathan Taylor as well, the rookie for Indianapolis, looked okay. He had a touchdown, and I think he had 100 yards or close to anyway. So he looks like he's slotted in there. So this game, I think, man, if Indianapolis lose this one, I mean, I still think the Jets can maybe bob up and win a game or 2 this year that you don't expect. But speaking of don't expect, I just don't expect them to win this one. The next game, the Carolina Panthers will play the LA Chargers. The Chargers are back at their home stadium. You would have seen during the week Tyrod Taylor was set to play. He was having issues, I think, or soreness with broken ribs. The team doctor gave him a painkilling injection and in doing so punctured his lung. Can you believe that? When it's the LA Chargers, you probably can believe that. There's not too many teams that you could envision this happening to, but the Chargers are one of them. And oh man, the LA. And can I just say, they had an opportunity to go for it in overtime, 4th and 1 at midfield, the Chargers, and they didn't. And instead, they decided to give the ball back to the team in Kansas City who have the best quarterback in the league and maybe the best kicker. And they forfeited their opportunity to go 1 yard, not 4th and 5 or 6 or 4th and 1. And they thought, no, we're going to give it back to you, Kansas City, and now you're only going to have to kick a field goal because we had the ball first and we didn't have the balls to go for it on 4th and 1 at midfield. The LA Chargers, man. Oh, I tell you, they don't have too many people that support them, too many fans. I know we always have a joke about that, but that's lucky because this team would do your head in. And also, they're going to play Justin Herbert again this week because Tyrod Taylor, it looks like he hasn't got up. Well, he hasn't got up from that punctured lung that he got from his own doctor and the broken ribs. Can I just say, Anthony Lynn, if you go back to Tyrod Taylor now, you have got rocks in your head. Justin Herbert found out he was going to play as the two teams were lining up for the opening kickoff, and he played like that. This is a team that has gone from, we don't think they're going to amount to much. So now they've got an exciting rookie who can throw the ball downfield and run around a bit. This is a franchise-changing decision to play Justin Herbert. Now, I know you don't want to throw your rookie out to the Wolves, but Anthony Lynn, you can't go back to Tyrod Taylor now, not after what you saw against, one of the best teams in the league, if not the best, and, a good defense and whatever, and you should have won the game, but you didn't have the guts to go for it. Justin Herbert is your guy, and Tyrod Taylor now is a good backup for you to have. That's why you got him. You got him to be a bridge guy, right? He was a bridge guy for 1 week. Oh man, you have to go with Justin Herbert from here on in after what you saw. It's a no-brainer. But I mean, the Chargers have shown in the past that sometimes they have no brains. So anyway, the Chargers will win this game. I think Christian McCaffrey as well for no Carolina. Teddy Bridgewater's going to have to carry the load here, and that's I like Teddy, but that's not the quarterback that he is. The next game, Detroit at Arizona. Remember, these two teams played in a tie in week 1 last season. Detroit desperate for a win. Arizona are a bit of a surprise at 2-0. Murray, 79 rushing yards per game through 2 weeks, which is the most out of any of the quarterbacks in the NFL. So he's started really well. The Lions, they've been hit hard by injuries, but they've blown leads in both of their games. In fact, I think I read during the week that they've blown leads in all of their last 10 games or something. And they've had double-digit leads in quite a few of their games. So they just don't know how to win. Detroit been hit with injuries, like I said, but no excuse. I think Arizona win and go to 3-0 in the desert. Tampa Bay at Denver. Well, this is not the Denver team that we thought could win some games this year. Locke and Cortland Sutton out and Von Miller still gone. Tampa Brady. I'm going to say that a lot this year. Tampa Brady. Oh my God. Anyway, they go to Denver. Brady is 4-7 in Denver, including the playoffs. It has been a bit of his kryptonite going and playing in the Rockies, hasn't it? And Bruce Arians wasn't happy with how they played on offense. He said that they had 7 drops, which cost them 125 yards. How exactly he equated that, I don't know. But I think Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think they will get their second win of the season here in Denver and go to 2-0. Blake Bortles signed by Denver, but it looks like Jeff Driscoll is going to play. Driscoll started 3 games for Detroit last season and then went to injured reserve with a hamstring injury. So good luck, Denver, there with a lot of your really important players out. Dallas Cowboys at Seattle. This will be a good game. I think this will be a game where there will be a lot of points scored and not a whole lot of defense. Seattle, I think they have the second worst, or possibly, Seattle, the worst defense through through 2 weeks, but, they've got Russell Wilson. He's the bookies' favourites, Russell Wilson, now to win the MVP, and I can see why. Everyone who's watched the first 2 weeks can see why. But it's interesting when you consider he's never received an MVP vote, and now he's the MVP favourite. My money would be on him by the way. He's thrown 4 touchdowns or more in both games, including 5 last week. DK Metcalf's performance last week against Stephon Gilmore, I think, puts the rest of the league on notice. Dallas, their probability of victory, like I said earlier, was as low as 2% in the fourth quarter. That's thanks to Next Gen Stats. I'm always interested to know how exactly they sort of work that out. But anyway, this one, I think you're going to see points in this one. I'm not sure what the over-under is, but I would expect it to be up near sort of 65, 70, and or somewhere between there anyway, and I reckon it'll probably go over that. I'm going to say Seattle at home. I don't trust their defense, but I don't trust Dallas's defense either. And Dallas, really, they should be 0-2. They got out of jail last week. Sunday night football, this is a big game. Green Bay, the hot-to-trot Green Bay Packers up against New Orleans. Aaron Jones, the running back there for the Packers, he tore up the Lions and had become just the second Packers player since 1950 with 200-plus scrimmage yards and 3 touchdowns in a game. He is on fire, the running back there for the Packers. And I tell you what, the Saints defense, they got absolutely gashed last week by the Raiders, who scored on 6 of the last 7 drives. If they think they got gashed last week, you watch out, because the Green Bay Packers are coming to town and their offense is averaging over 500 yards through the first 2 games. So I think a lot of people had the Saints, including me, as a Super Bowl contender this year. I had the Saints in the Super Bowl. I think this game is scheduled to finish at about 1:30 tomorrow afternoon. I think a lot of people's opinions on the Saints could change after this one, because I think Green Bay are going to win. And if the first 2 weeks, I should say, are anything to go by, I think the Packers could have a comfortable win in this one. So the Packers to win for me. And then Monday night football. This is the game that we've been looking forward to for a while. Kansas City at Baltimore. The game of the season. It probably should have been the AFC Championship game last year, and then Tennessee did what they did. The game between the last 2 MVPs, of course, I'm looking forward to this one. Lamar Jackson has been really, really good the first 2 weeks. He's connected on 75, this was last week, connected on 75% of his passes to 9 different targets. He's just getting better and better as a passer. Not bad for a running back, hey, Lamar. These 2 teams have played each other the last 2 seasons, both of those games in Kansas City. The Chiefs beat Baltimore 33-28 last season at Arrowhead, and then the year before in overtime, they beat them 27-24. This time, it's in Baltimore, and I think Baltimore are the best team in the league right now, and I think they will win. But I'm really looking forward to this one, and I think there could be some points scored, and there will be one of these teams who will assert themselves, probably as Super Bowl favourites, whoever wins this game. So a really good slate of games, and particularly those last 2, Sunday night football and Monday night football, that I cannot wait for. So we'll take another quick break here. When we come back, I'm going to have a little bit of a look at some of the news in college football, and I'm going to answer some questions that you guys have sent through as well. That's when we return on the other side of this. We're talking American footy with me, Brent Sternberg, on KC Radio 97.7 FM. Welcome back, gang. You're listening to Talkin' American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, on KC Radio 97.7 FM. We're having a look at all the big games in the NFL. Well, we have had a look at all the big games in the NFL coming up tomorrow, week 3, of course. Just turn our attention quickly to college football, and there's a little bit happening. There was a decision made during the week by the Pac-12 conference. They voted on Thursday to return to play to college football in the fall. So last week I sort of touched base on where everything was in terms of college football, and I said that as of October 24, all leagues and conferences from the Power 5, that is, would be back in action after the Big Ten last week announced that they would be back playing on the weekend of October 24, and we wondered when the Pac-12 might be back in action. We now have our answer. So beginning November 6th, each team in the Pac-12, just reading here, will play 7 conference-only games, with the championship game scheduled for December 18. So I think that was a more or less unanimous vote by the schools there. So that's actually it's good news that we're going to have all the schools back. And it's like I said there, the Pac-12 will wrap up on December 18, or that's when their championship game will be. It will be interesting to see when all of the conferences wrap up their conference play, and obviously assuming that all the leagues get to the end. I have seen that some games have been postponed, or were postponed this weekend, including the Notre Dame game. I think they were set to play Wake Forest from memory this morning, and that game has been postponed. So there's all those things that are going to throw out the timeline of the schedule that's been thrown out anyway from the beginning. But if we can get all of the championship games and everything to sort of happen around that sort of mid-December, we may be able to have some sort of bowl season, and the playoff, the college football playoff, in sort of early mid-January when it normally is anyway, and then perhaps the off season schedule in terms of pro days and the draft and combines and everything might not be thrown off all that much. That is everything going to plan as is the plan as we sit here, in late September. So we had a few results last week. Let me just have a look at this. So we had Coastal Carolina beat Campbell 43-21. Cincinnati beat Austin PA 55-20. Clemson smacked Citadel 49-0. They seem to get Citadel every season, Clemson, and that's a bit of an absolute walkthrough on their schedule every year. UTSA 24-10 over SFA, and UTEP 17-13 over ACU. The SEC schools, I believe, were back in action today. I'll have a bit of a look at that next week. But college football is starting to ramp up. Well, in the case of the Big 12 and the ACC, they're well and truly underway. They're 3 or 4 weeks into their schedule. And like I say, the Big 10 will be in action in 4 weeks, just over 4 weeks time. And then we heard this week, like I said, the Pac-12 will be back in action as well. Okie dokie, I've had some questions sent through which I'm going to answer now. If you want to shoot through some of your questions, you can find me on Twitter at theboylives26. I think that's my Twitter handle, or if you type in my name, Brent Sternberg, you'll find me at theboylives. I think there might be an underscore in there somewhere as well. So the first question here we've got from Josh. Thanks for your question, Josh. He says, if the New York Jets finish with pick 1, will they get rid of Darnold and pick Trevor Lawrence? Well, yes, I think so. That's the short answer. I think if the Jets finish with, if they have a season in which they finish with pick 1, I think that means that their season that is starting to go downhill continues to go downhill. They fire Adam Gase like they should have done last season. I don't like to, fire coaches from my armchair, but I really do think that Adam Gase was lucky to keep his job last year. Can I just say, I have liked Sam Darnold, and I have a bit of a love for players that come out of the University of Southern California. That's my favorite college. I don't know why, but I just seem to love that school and the prospects that come out of there. So I like Sam Darnold more than most, and I think he's been put into a situation that most quarterbacks would have failed with, poor offensive line play, and he's had no real skill position players, I should say, of any note. And this is just what the Jets do. They fail their young players, they fail themselves, and I think if the season continues on this sort of trajectory, I think the Jets are going to find themselves very much in the mix for pick 1, or even if they find themselves, even if they win, find a way to win 2 or 3 games, they're still going to wind up with a top 2 or 3 pick. And if they find themselves in that situation, I think it's absolutely feasible that they take Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, or maybe one of the other quarterbacks that puts their name into the ring with a good season. Of course, we don't know. Like I just said before, with the college football side of things, we don't know who's going to declare and who's going to come back for a year, having maybe missed or sat out this year. We'll wait and see. But if the Jets finish with pick 1, I have little doubt in my mind that they will move on from Sam Darnold and take a quarterback. Whether or not that is Trevor Lawrence, I'm not sure. But what that would mean is Sam Darnold would then head to his second team. And I don't think there would be a shortage of teams that would be interested in Sam Darnold, particularly teams who have good support networks around him and talent around him, and maybe an aging quarterback, someone like Pittsburgh, New Orleans, maybe Indianapolis, perhaps, and basically, franchises like that would give him what the Jets haven't. So, in short, would they move on and take a quarterback? Yes, whether that's Trevor Lawrence, I'm not too sure. This next one's from Rob. How far can the Chargers go with Herbert as opposed to Tyrod Taylor? Well, I ripped the Chargers earlier on for a few things. I think they need to start. I think they need to move ahead with Justin Herbert from now on. He looked really good in that game last week against the Chiefs, a game that they should have won, but they didn't because they didn't have the balls to go for that 4th and 1. How far can they go with Justin Herbert? I think all of a sudden, this is a good defense. The issue with the Chargers, and I said this coming into the season, is with their quarterback play and their offensive line. Now, their offensive line I still have concerns with, but if Justin Herbert could come in and play like he did in that first game, and there may be a little bit of adrenaline and the first game, and if he starts to play, he'll definitely, you would think, have those sort of rookie moments. But I think this sort of takes the team from being maybe a 5 or 6 win team into playoff contention, particularly with an extra playoff spot. And I just, Tyrod Taylor is a great backup and he's a great person to have in your quarterback room, but they need to go with Justin Herbert now. And like I say, I think they can win 7, 8, maybe 9 games within that division that should get them, it should have them in contention for that 6th or 7th seed for a long time this season. So how far do I think they can go? Possibly playoffs with Justin Herbert. That might be a little bit of an overreaction to one game, but I think it's a no-brainer. They have to, he is the future, and the future is now with the Chargers and Justin Herbert. So thanks for your question, Rob. This next one comes from Nick. Will the Saints move forward with Jameis Winston over Drew Brees or draft a quarterback? Well, I have real concerns for Drew Brees. I think I said that earlier on. And the Saints, I don't want to overreact to one game, especially with a champion quarterback. But, man, he just didn't look himself, did he, Drew Brees? And he hasn't for a little while. I think if they move on from Drew Brees this season, I think Jameis Winston, I know there's that thing with Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill. I can't see them playing Taysom Hill. I mean, he is a gadget guy, and I know that's become a bit of a dirty word and a bit of an insult almost, but he is a gadget guy, and that's where he is at his best, and I don't think they would want him to play the number one quarterback role, because then you're taking him out of that sort of gadget role that he's performed so well. So I think if they move on from Brees next season, the Saints, and Brees did sign a 2-year contract extension coming into this year, so he does have a year left. But if they decide to mutually part ways, I know Brees has a role in the commentary booth, signed, sealed, and delivered. I think they'll go with Jameis Winston. I'm not sure they will draft a quarterback, not early anyway, but there's still a lot of water to go under the bridge there for the Saints. This next question is from Tom. Is it possible all 4 teams from the NFC West make the playoffs? Of course, that has been impossible up until this year with 7 playoff spots now. Possibly, but I have my doubts on San Francisco now with all of their players that they have lost through injury. And then you've got Seattle, who are still, I think, a lopsided team. They rely on Russell Wilson a lot, but he's one of the best players in the league right now, if not the best. So I think if you're going to rely on one player, you'd want it to be Russell Wilson, but they're still, a good enough team to make the playoffs. The LA Rams are better than they were last year. Last year, they've caught a lot of people by surprise, and the Arizona Cardinals are better. So I wouldn't be surprised if those three teams all go past San Francisco this year and make the playoffs. But the issue with all four teams making the playoffs, I think, is San Francisco. And earlier on, I said I've put a mark through them for this year. So can all four teams make it? No, I'm sorry, Tom. I don't think so. Final question here from Riley. Which coach is under the most pressure going into week 2? Adam Gase, certainly, of the Jets. Who else? I mean, possibly Doug Peterson. I think Carson Wentz is under more pressure, though, than Doug Peterson. Sean Payton, maybe. But yeah, I think Adam Gase. I think that's the easiest answer, and I cannot, unless they turn things around, I cannot see a way in which the Jets make the playoffs or even get back into contention and save Adam Gase's bacon this season. So that's my answer there. Okie dokie. I'm about to knock off here, guys. Just quickly, the games on television tomorrow morning: the Steelers and Houston on 7 Mate. At the same time, over on ESPN, the New England Patriots and the Raiders. Then we have Tampa Bay at Denver on 7 Mate. That's at 6:30. Seattle and Dallas, can't wait for that one. That's at 6:30 also on ESPN. And then, of course, Sunday night and Monday night football, both on ESPN. The Saints and the Packers, both teams need a win there, or the Saints do anyway. And the game of the round, tune in for that one, Monday night football on ESPN. That's all I've got time for tonight, folks. I'll see you next week, and we'll cheer the fat on everything that's happened in week 3, 10 p.m. next Sunday night here on KC Radio 97.7 FM, talking American footy with me, Brent Sternberg. I will see you then. Bye now.